Have you ever sat in silence and felt that something in this life isn't quite real? You go to work, eat, sleep, everything moves along as usual. Yet somewhere deep inside, a vague question keeps repeating, what am I living for? Maybe you've experienced pain, maybe you've faced loss, maybe you've sat alone at night, feeling a quiet emptiness no one else could fill. And so, you began to search for meaning, to search for peace, to search for something that can't be easily named, but feels deeply real. Something that doesn't come from material things, success, or even the advice of others. For many people, that search eventually leads them to Buddhism. Buddhism is not just a belief system. It doesn't demand you to worship a supreme being, doesn't ask for blind faith, rituals, or fear. Instead, Buddhism begins with something very simple: looking inward, facing suffering, understanding the true nature of life. The Buddha never claimed to be a god. He was a human being who experienced aging, illness, and death. He lived in luxury and gave it all up to seek the truth. And the truth he discovered wasn't something outside, it was found within the human mind. In this first part of the video, we will explore the origins of Buddhism, ancient Indian society, where people were divided by strict caste systems, where religion was reserved for the elite, and the poor were denied spiritual knowledge. It was in this world that Prince Siddhartha Gautama was born. Though raised in royal luxury, he could not turn away from the suffering he saw around him. He encountered old age, sickness, death, and finally a monk, someone who seemed unafraid of life. That moment planted a seed of awakening. When he left the palace and became an ascetic, he did not choose extreme deprivation nor return to indulgence. He chose the middle way, a path between extremes. After 6 years of meditation and deep inner observation, he attained enlightenment under the Bodhi tree and became the Buddha, the awakened one. So what is enlightenment? In Buddhism, it's not magic or supernatural powers. Enlightenment is seeing the truth of suffering. It's realizing that all things are impermanent, without a fixed self, and that clinging to them brings only more pain. The Buddha didn't promise heaven or threaten hell. He simply said, I only point the way. Each person must walk the path themselves. In this part, we won't just learn the Buddha's biography. We'll explore why his teachings continue to resonate with millions of people, even those who don't identify as Buddhist. Because the core message of Buddhism isn't found in rituals. It's found in practice, observing the mind, understanding suffering, and finding the way to liberation. We'll also begin laying the foundation for future parts, understanding the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha's first teaching, the Eightfold Path, the steps toward freedom, the concept of non-self, karma, rebirth, and the final goal, nirvana, a state beyond attachment and beyond death. But above all, what matters most is not remembering definitions, but feeling what part of these teachings speaks to your heart. You don't need to become a Buddhist to understand Buddhism. Maybe all you need is to listen quietly and let something awaken within you. Because the path of awakening, as the Buddha said, is not up in the sky or deep in the earth. It's within each of us, in the very moment you begin to ask, how do I truly live? Around the 6th century BCE, the Indian subcontinent was a vibrant land of diverse cultures, philosophies, and spiritual traditions. It was also a time marked by deep social divisions and spiritual hierarchy. The caste system, known as Varna, divided people into 4 major classes: Brahmins, priests and scholars; Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers; Vaishyas, merchants and traders; and Shudras, laborers and servants. Outside of this structure were those considered untouchables, people stripped of basic rights and dignity, barred from access to spiritual teachings or even social recognition as full human beings. Spiritual knowledge at the time was monopolized by the Brahmin class, who held exclusive access to the Vedas, sacred texts written in Sanskrit, and performed intricate rituals inaccessible to ordinary people. The poor and lower castes had little hope of breaking free from their social position, and even less of discovering spiritual liberation. It was within this context that Buddhism emerged, not as a religion to worship, but as a path of inner freedom, open to all. Siddhartha Gautama, who would later be known as the Buddha, was born into this world. He came from the Shakya clan, a noble warrior lineage, Kshatriya. in a small kingdom called Kapilavastu, located near the border of what is now India and Nepal. According to tradition, before his birth, his mother Queen Maya dreamt of a white elephant with 6 tusks entering her side, a sacred sign foretelling the birth of a great being. Siddhartha was born in the Lumbini garden, and it is said that upon birth, he took 7 steps, and at each step a lotus flower bloomed, though symbolic rather than historical. This imagery reflects the reverence and expectation surrounding this extraordinary child. At his birth, wise sages predicted that the child would either become a great king or a great spiritual teacher. Fearing the latter, his father, King Suddhodana, sheltered Siddhartha inside the palace, surrounding him with luxury, beauty, and pleasure, shielding him from all signs of suffering. He was provided the best education, trained in martial arts, and lived a life of perfection and indulgence. But instead of making him content, this sheltered life ignited a deeper curiosity within him, a longing to know the truth beyond the palace walls. As Siddhartha grew older, he requested to leave the palace for the first time. With his charioteer Channa, he ventured into the surrounding city. What he saw during this journey would later be known as the 4 sights: an old man, a sick person, a corpse, and finally, an ascetic monk walking peacefully. These were the Buddha-to-be's first encounters with aging, illness, and death, the universal conditions of human life that no one, not even a prince, could escape. But it was the 4th sight, the serene monk, that left the deepest impression. There was something in that calm face, that simple robe, that spoke of a peace untouched by suffering. These sights stirred something within Siddhartha, a profound question far greater than wealth or power. How can one overcome the suffering of human existence? And with that question burning in his heart, the prince's journey toward truth began. After witnessing the 4 sights: an old man, a sick man, a dead body, and a wandering monk, Prince Siddhartha's mind was no longer at peace. Though he lived in a magnificent palace, with a beautiful wife, a newborn son, and everything a person could possibly desire, he felt that something was deeply wrong. Those images of suffering were not fleeting shocks, they were awakenings. Siddhartha began to realize that no matter how luxurious life might be, aging, illness, and death were unavoidable realities for all beings. And if the world was filled with such suffering, was there a path to rise above it? His heart was torn between 2 paths: to remain a king, living a life of power within the confines of suffering and mortality, or to abandon it all in search of a greater truth, not just for himself, but for all of humanity. In the end, on a moonlit night while the palace slept, Siddhartha quietly bid farewell to his wife and his newborn son. With his charioteer, he left the capital city on horseback, cut off his long hair, relinquished his royal garments, and put on the simple robes of an ascetic. He began the life of a spiritual seeker. Renouncing royal life was not easy, especially while he was still in the prime of his youth, at the height of worldly success. Yet it was precisely that decision that marked the beginning of one of the most profound spiritual journeys in human history. In the years that followed, he wandered through forests and villages, studying under various renowned spiritual teachers of his time. He practiced intense meditation, prolonged fasting, and severe asceticism, believing that by mastering the body, he could free the mind. There came a time when his body was emaciated, barely skin and bones, his breath faint, his strength almost gone. Yet, enlightenment did not come. He realized that punishing the body only led to more suffering, not liberation. True awakening could not arise from extremes. It had to come through balance, through clarity, and calm observation. From this understanding, Siddhartha chose what he later called the middle way, a path between indulgence and denial, one that maintained physical and mental equilibrium for deep insight to emerge. One day, Siddhartha sat beneath a Bodhi tree, near the banks of the Naranjara River. With unwavering determination, he vowed, "I will not rise from this seat until I attain full enlightenment, or die in the attempt." Hours passed, then days. He watched his mind with unwavering stillness, observing cravings, anger, fear, illusions. Temptations rose, memories resurfaced, visions appeared, but he did not cling. He did not resist. He simply watched, as still as a mountain in a storm. And then, as the morning star rose in the sky, it happened. The veil of illusion lifted. He saw into the nature of all things, impermanence, interdependence, emptiness. He realized that suffering arose from attachment, and that freedom was possible through inner transformation. At that moment, Siddhartha became the Buddha, the awakened one. Enlightenment was not about becoming a deity. The Buddha did not claim supernatural powers, nor did he promise miracles. He simply saw clearly and completely. He realized that all phenomena are transient, that the self is not fixed or separate, and that peace comes not from controlling the world, but from understanding it. What made the Buddha's awakening truly extraordinary was not just that he achieved it, but that he chose to share it. After 7 weeks of deep meditation following his enlightenment, he stood up and began teaching, not to the privileged few, but to anyone who sincerely sought truth. He taught men and women, rich and poor, Brahmins and outcasts alike. His message was universal. Liberation is possible, for anyone. The journey of a prince who gave up his throne, endured extremes, found balance, reached awakening, and spent the rest of his life teaching others, is more than a historical story. It is a reminder that truth does not lie in rituals, status, or belief, but in direct experience. And that within each of us, regardless of background or circumstance, is the potential to awaken. After attaining enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree, Siddhartha Gautama did not rush to preach right away. For the following 7 weeks, he remained near the tree, meditating, walking in silence, and observing the movements of his mind and the unfolding of all phenomena. It is said that during this time, he hesitated. Would people truly be able to understand the truth he had just realized? What he had discovered could not be contained in words, nor captured by conventional knowledge. It was a direct knowing, beyond thought, beyond language, and yet, moved by deep compassion, he chose to share the path, not because he believed everyone would understand it, but because he knew that even if one person could hear it and practice it, the world might carry just a little less suffering. The Buddha's first sermon took place in the deer park at Sarnath, near the city of Varanasi, where he encountered 5 of his former companions from his ascetic days. At first, they were reluctant to engage with him, believing that he had abandoned the path of extreme self-denial, the only path they considered valid. But as the Buddha approached, radiating calm, clarity, and compassion, they found themselves unable to look away. He sat with them and began to share the truth he had realized. This would become the first teaching in Buddhist history, and the foundational cornerstone of all that followed, the Four Noble Truths. The Four Noble Truths are a direct insight into the nature of existence. First is the truth of suffering, that life inevitably contains suffering. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Being separated from what one loves is suffering. And being close to what one dislikes is suffering. This is not a pessimistic view, but a call to face reality honestly. Second is the truth of the cause of suffering. Craving, attachment, and ignorance are the roots of our pain. Third is the truth of the cessation of suffering. If the cause is removed, suffering will end. And fourth is the truth of the path. The way to end suffering is the Noble Eightfold Path, which includes right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Upon hearing this teaching, the 5 companions were deeply moved. They recognized its truth and asked to become disciples. Thus, they became the first monks, the beginning of the Sangha, the community of Buddhist practitioners. From that point onward, the Buddha began a journey that would last over 40 years, walking from village to village, city to countryside, teaching all who were willing to listen. Kings, merchants, the poor, the outcast, even courtesans, all were welcome. To anyone with an open heart, he shared the path. What made the Buddha's teachings unique was his approach. He never imposed belief. He did not ask people to blindly accept his words. Instead, he often said, "Do not believe something just because I, the Buddha, say it. See it for yourself. Test it in your own experience." His teachings were not for worship, but for practice. He did not create hierarchies or demand submission. Rather, he empowered each individual to look within, to understand for themselves, and to walk the path of liberation by their own insight. In its early years, Buddhism spread rapidly, not because of power or wealth, but because it touched the deepest suffering within the human heart and offered a path out of that suffering through awareness and insight. People came to the Buddha not out of fear, but because they felt a sense of peace radiating from him. There were wealthy individuals who renounced all their possessions to pursue the spiritual path. There were women who had endured great pain and went on to become wise and respected nuns. There were even those who had once rejected or opposed the teachings. But upon hearing the Dharma, their hearts were completely transformed. The appearance of the Buddha, and his first sermon at Deer Park, did not merely mark the birth of Buddhism, it was a turning point in human thought. For the first time, someone dared to say, suffering is not destiny. And every individual, whether king or beggar, holds within themselves the power to be free. That journey continued for more than 40 years, and yet, that very first teaching, with just 4 simple truths, still holds its power today. Because suffering is still here, and the path beyond suffering, through understanding and practice, is still waiting for each of us to walk it. The Buddha's teachings begin with something profoundly realistic: life is suffering. This isn't a pessimistic view, nor is it meant to inspire fear, rather, it's an invitation to face what we often avoid. In Buddhism, suffering isn't limited to physical or emotional pain. It also includes dissatisfaction, restlessness, and the fragile nature of everything we cling to. We suffer not only when we're hurt, but when we try to hold on to things that are always changing. We suffer because we love and cannot keep, because we hate and cannot escape, because we never truly feel full, whole, or free. The Buddha did not point to suffering to complain. He taught clearly, there is a cause for suffering, and a way out of it. That cause is craving, the grasping, the clinging, the constant desire to hold on to what we call mine. Must have, must not lose, yet everything that arises also passes away. When we don't understand that, we try to control, to possess, and that very effort brings suffering. Freedom, then, does not come from gaining more, but from letting go. Not by escaping life, but by seeing it differently, through eyes no longer clouded by the illusion that everything should go our way. One of the most central, and also most challenging, concepts in Buddhism is the idea of non-self, or anatta. It means that there is no fixed, permanent self, no eternal I at the core of our being. At first, this may sound strange or even uncomfortable. From a young age, we're taught that I am a separate person with a name, memories, likes, dislikes, and opinions. But when we truly observe ourselves, we begin to see that I is constantly changing. Our thoughts today differ from yesterday. Our emotions, views, our body, even our most personal beliefs, are always shifting. According to the Buddha, what we call self is merely a temporary combination of 5 aggregates: form, the body; feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These interact like a flowing river, never still, never fixed. But through ignorance, we believe there's a me behind it all, a solid identity controlling the show. And when that identity feels threatened, insulted, or invalidated, we suffer. Understanding non-self doesn't mean we disappear or become numb. On the contrary, it brings lightness. We no longer have to defend the ego so fiercely, nor be wounded by things that aren't truly us. When the self is no longer the center of everything, we begin to see others with compassion, live with humility, and move more freely through each moment. If suffering is reality, and non-self is truth, then meditation is the path that helps us see both. In Buddhism, meditation isn't about closing your eyes to escape the world. It's a way of living, a returning to yourself in each moment. When sitting, be aware that you're sitting. When breathing, know that you're breathing. When sadness arises, know that sadness is here, without running away, without reacting, just observing with calm clarity. This practice helps the mind become still, not through force, but through gentle letting go. When we're no longer swept away by endless thoughts, we begin to experience life as it is, simple, yet miraculous. We hear the song of a bird without needing to name its species. We feel sunlight without needing to analyze it. We begin to truly live, instead of merely thinking about life. Meditation is not separate from daily life. In fact, It allows us to live more fully within it. Whether washing dishes, walking, eating, or speaking, if we are fully present in that moment. It is meditation. The Buddha once said, "The past is gone. The future has not yet come, only the present is the place where life truly happens." Mindfulness is not a mystical state reserved for saints. It is something each of us can touch when we pause. Breathe deeply, and listen inwardly. That is where the path to liberation begins, with a single breath. A single step, a single moment of non-judgmental awareness. When people speak of the soul, they often imagine it as an invisible, eternal entity that lives on after death, something separate from the body that can be reborn, reincarnated, or moved to another realm. In many religions, the soul is considered the immortal core of a person. But in Buddhism, this concept of a fixed, everlasting soul does not exist. The Buddha did not deny life after death, but he also did not confirm the existence of a permanent self or soul. What Buddhism focuses on is not whether a soul exists, but this essential question: what continues after the body dies? The answer is consciousness, a flowing process shaped by karma and conditions. This consciousness is not a permanent me. It is more like a flame passed from one candle to another. There is continuity, but no fixed essence. It is not a soul that travels from one life to the next, but rather a stream of mental energy and karmic momentum that carries forward according to the law of cause and effect. Like the echo of a sound, the original sound has faded, but the reverberation remains. So in Buddhism, instead of asking, "What is the soul?" we are invited to observe the flow of our own mind, because that flow, not a permanent soul, shapes what comes after death. If there is no eternal soul, then what causes a person to be reborn? In Buddhism, the answer lies in karma, intentional actions shaped by awareness. Every thought, word, and deed leaves an imprint on the stream of consciousness. These karmic imprints don't vanish when the body dies. Instead, they crystallize into the energetic momentum that directs consciousness toward a new life. Rebirth is not a reward or punishment. It is a natural outcome of cause and effect. Every seed we plant, whether wholesome or unwholesome, will sprout when the right conditions are met. The next life isn't decided by a god, but by what we ourselves have thought, said, and done, in this life and countless others before. Because there is no fixed person being reborn. There is no permanent memory or identity that transfers. What continues are karmic tendencies, like seeds of habit, that give rise to a new being. Rebirth may happen in many realms, not just as a human, but also in heavenly, animal, ghostly, or hell-like existences, depending on karma. Buddhism doesn't teach rebirth to frighten us. It teaches it to remind us to take responsibility for this very life. Each moment is an opportunity to plant new seeds, and with that insight, we naturally wish to sow good ones, not out of fear for the next life, but out of compassion, mindfulness, and wisdom in this one. If Buddhism says there is no permanent, self, or unchanging soul, then who are we in this very moment? The answer is not simple. But the Buddha did not ask us to search for ourselves somewhere outside. Instead, he taught us to observe directly, through our breath, our feelings, our thoughts, and we will see that everything is changing. The self is not fixed, but neither does it vanish completely. It is like a flame, ever shifting, yet present, glowing moment by moment. So rather than debating whether a soul exists, Buddhism invites us to return to awareness, where each moment is a temporary expression of body, mind, and karma. When we are angry, we are not forever an angry person. When we love, we are not eternally the one who loves. All experiences are arising and fading within a much larger stream, far beyond our familiar idea of I. In that sense, the soul, if we may use the word in a Buddhist context, is not a permanent thing that floats off after death. It is the continuity of consciousness, the stream of habits, karma, and awareness, constantly recreating itself from moment to moment. And here's the miracle: we can shape that stream right now, through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom. We don't need to wait for the next life, or for someone to save us. We are already crafting our soul in every choice, every thought, every breath, There's a common misconception that Buddhism is only for those who want to leave the world to become monks. Shave their heads, live in temples, and chant all day. But in reality, the Buddha's teachings weren't created solely for monks. They were meant for everyone who lives and suffers, whether kings, merchants, farmers, courtesans, or the poor. Buddhism doesn't demand rituals or forms. You don't need prayer beads, offerings, or new names. You simply begin where you are, by observing your own mind. In today's fast-paced world, with constant pressure and endless noise, people often feel lost. We're pulled by expectations, comparisons, and worries and slowly lose touch with ourselves. Buddhism doesn't come to judge, but to invite us to pause, to stop and breathe, to feel what's truly happening inside, to recognize that life isn't against us, perhaps we've just stopped listening to it. Buddhism is a path of returning, not to a physical place, but to ourselves, to presence in each moment. And that is something anyone can practice, whether in a monastery or in the heart of a bustling city. Mindfulness is not something lofty. It doesn't require you to meditate for hours or memorize sacred texts. Mindfulness is when you drink a glass of water and truly know you are drinking. It's when you listen to someone without interrupting with judgment. It's when you walk down the street and genuinely feel your feet touching the ground. These seemingly small things, when done with presence, are meditation. They are the path. In the rush of modern life, we often live as if everything is urgent. We eat without tasting. We sleep while our minds are racing. We sit beside loved ones while scrolling our phones. It's not because we lack love, but because we've lost the ability to be fully present. Buddhism doesn't ask us to quit our jobs or leave the world behind. Instead, it offers us a way to live more deeply within the life we already have. Anyone can create a small meditation space within their daily rhythm by taking a few moments to breathe slowly, to observe emotions, to release unnecessary tension. No bells, no beads, just coming back to yourself, like returning to a familiar home you haven't visited in a while. In the end, what Buddhism offers is not a belief system, but a path back to inner freedom. Freedom here does not mean getting everything you want, or living without any attachments. It means freedom from suffering, from illusion, from fear, from the endless cycle of wanting, fearing, clinging, and losing. The freedom the Buddha spoke of is the ability to rest within yourself, not swayed by praise or blame, not needing to prove you're right, not hiding your wounds. It's the capacity to see clearly without judgment, to touch suffering without being swept away, to live fully without trying to control everything. And the most beautiful part? Anyone can walk this path. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need all the answers. You just need to begin with one mindful step. Buddhism does not promise that you'll never hurt again, but it shows that you don't have to be dragged by your pain. You can live in a world of change and chaos, and still carry within you a quiet space that nothing can shake. And perhaps, that is the deepest kind of liberation, realizing that you don't need to escape life. You can stay, with a mind that is open, grounded, and full of compassion.